I took the job because it was nights and it paid okay and I needed something that wouldn't wreck my GPA. That's the whole story. No deeper reason. I was finishing a criminal justice degree at Bradley, had 2 semesters left, and the security posting at the old Peoria State Hospital in Bartonville came up through a veteran placement board. Former military police, no current commitments, available nights. That's me. I figured it was some kind of quiet placeholder. Walk a perimeter, check some locks, drink bad coffee until sunrise. I'd done harder things in worse conditions. I wasn't wrong about the hard things. I was pretty wrong about everything else. The facility is officially called the Bowen Building now, which sounds like an office park. It isn't. It's a massive abandoned psychiatric hospital that's been sitting empty since the 80s, and it looks exactly like what it is. Red brick gone dark with age, windows either boarded or just gone, fire escapes rusted into shapes that don't quite match the building anymore. The grounds are overgrown but maintained just enough to be depressing. Mowed grass, weeds coming up through the old service road, a chain link fence with a wooden gate arm at the main entrance that looked like it had been replaced a few times. The state owns it. Someone occasionally talks about restoration. Nothing ever happens. In the meantime, they pay 2 guys to walk around it at night and make sure nobody falls through a floor and sues. That was the job. I met Ronnie Robertson on my first shift. He was already at the gate when I pulled in, standing under the single working floodlight with a coffee thermos and a ring of keys the size of a grapefruit. Big guy. Silver hair, square jaw, permanent stubble. He looked at me the way experienced people look at new people. Not unfriendly, just measuring. He had a spotlight clipped to his belt that was probably military surplus, the kind that could temporarily blind a car. "Gibson," he said. Not a question. "Yeah," I said. He handed me a laminated map of the grounds and turned toward the building. That was orientation. I figured out pretty quickly that Robertson had worked the Bowen Building long enough that it was basically his. He knew which corridor doors had sticky locks, which section of tunnel got standing water after rain, which windows the teenagers used to get onto the fire escapes. He carried those keys and that spotlight like equipment, not accessories. He walked the perimeter with a specific route and a specific pace, and did not deviate from either. I just followed him for the first few nights and tried to learn the layout without asking too many questions. He seemed to appreciate that. He wasn't unfriendly. He just didn't have a lot of patience for things he considered a waste of time. Ghost stories were high on that list. The Bowen Building has a legend. Most places like it do. This one's called Old Book. A patient from back when the hospital was operating. Supposedly some kind of laborer who worked the grounds and cried at funerals for patients nobody else mourned. There are different versions. In some of them, he still walks the grounds. In some of them, he's inside the walls. I heard it from a gas station attendant in Bartonville on my second week. Heard it again from a couple of college kids we chased off the East Fire escape around week 3. They had an EVP recorder and a printed out Wikipedia article about the place in a Ziploc bag. I don't know why the bag. I made the mistake of mentioning it to Robertson. He looked at me for a second. "You believe that?" I didn't say I believed it. I said I heard it. "Same thing when you repeat it," he said. And that was the end of that conversation. Robertson's position on the haunted hospital legend was basically the same as his position on the teenagers and the ghost hunters and the amateur paranormal investigators we occasionally found setting up cameras in the stairwells, contempt efficiently applied. He'd been working the grounds for over a decade and had never seen anything that wasn't explainable by old buildings settling, bad electrical, or people who watched too much cable television. He said this regularly and without variation. It was practically a speech. I didn't push it. I wasn't sure what I believed, and I wasn't going to argue with a retired state trooper about it on week 2 of a job I needed. The routine settled in fast. We started each shift at 10, did a full perimeter walk, checked the main entry points, and then split the internal patrol. Robertson took the upper floors, and I took the ground level and the access points to the tunnel system. The tunnels ran under the whole building. Old coal delivery infrastructure, mostly sealed off but with a few accessible entry points we were supposed to keep locked. I checked the locks. They were always locked. The tunnels were Robertson's least favorite topic, which probably meant something had happened down there once that he didn't want to talk about. I didn't ask. Most nights nothing happened. We chased off maybe 3 or 4 groups of ghost hunters a month, filed the paperwork, and went home. I studied on my breaks. Robertson drank his thermos coffee and did crosswords in a small notebook he kept in his breast pocket. It was the kind of job that exists in a lot of people's lives as a gap between other things. I was in the gap. It was fine. Then it was a Tuesday in late October, about 6 weeks into my rotation, and I was doing the ground floor check near the main entrance when I heard it. The gate arm was a wooden barrier. Standard stuff, a counterweighted bar that lifted when you had the code. I heard it go first, a crack, and then a longer splintering sound, the kind of noise wood makes when something hits it at speed and doesn't stop. Then headlights swung across the entry road, and a black Cadillac Escalade came through the gap in the fence and rolled across the grounds and coasted to a stop about 40 feet from the main steps. The engine was still running. The headlights stayed on. I got Robertson on the radio and moved toward the vehicle. He was there in under 2 minutes, coming from the east side with his spotlight already out. We came at the car from different angles, which was habit from his state trooper days and which I appreciated without saying so. The first thing I noticed was the driver's window. It was gone, not rolled down, gone. The glass was outside the car, spread across the ground in chunks, which meant it had been broken outward from the inside. Both front seats were empty. Robertson put his spotlight through the windshield and we both looked at the back. Expensive equipment. A laptop bag, a hard case with foam padding visible through the unlatched lid, and 3 GoPro cameras on small tripods that had been set up on the rear bench seat and were now knocked sideways. The kind of setup someone brings when they're documenting something. The kind of setup that costs real money. Robertson tried the rear door, unlocked. He opened it, and we got a better look. The cameras were still recording. One of them was pointed at the ceiling. The hard case held more gear. I didn't know all of it. Some kind of EMF reader, a thermal camera, cables. On the floor mat, between the back seats and the front, there was a digital recorder. Small, handheld, the kind journalists use. Black plastic with a rubber grip. There was blood on it, not a lot. A smear across the grip and a few drops on the mat beside it. Robertson crouched down and looked at it without touching it for a second. I looked at the floor mat more carefully. The mat on the driver's side had dirt on it, the kind of pattern you get from someone's shoe. The mat on the passenger side had a different kind of mark. Bare feet, small, pressed into the carpet like someone had been standing on the seat and then stepped down. I stood up and looked around. The grounds were empty, not a sound except the Escalade's engine idling and the wind coming through the broken window. Robertson picked up the recorder. He pressed play. There was a second of static, the kind you get from a cheap speaker pushed too loud, and then a man's voice came through. He was crying, not quiet crying either, the kind where you can hear the breathing fall apart between words. The walls are... A pause. Wet breath. The walls are taking the light. It's going into them. It's just going in. Robertson didn't move. I didn't either. She walked into it. There was a mirror, and it wasn't there before. And she just walked into it, and I can't find the voice broke up. Not static. The man just stopped being able to make words for a few seconds. You could hear him trying. My daughter walked into a mirror that wasn't there. That was the last sentence before the frequency hit. I don't have a good way to describe it. It wasn't loud exactly, it was more like it went straight past your ears and into the part of your skull that sits behind your eyes. Robertson dropped the recorder like it had burned him. I had my hands up before I even decided to move them. The sound lasted maybe 3 seconds, and then it was gone. And the recorder was in the dirt, and neither of us said anything for a moment. Robertson rubbed his ear with 2 fingers. His face was flat, the way it gets when he's working something out and doesn't want you to see it. I was still thinking about the word daughter. The man on the recorder had a daughter with him. Had. Past tense, the way he said it. She walked into it. Not she's walking, not she went. Walked, like it was already done. I looked at the ground. The footprints I'd noticed on the passenger side mat continued outside the car. Small, bare feet, the kind of print a kid makes, pressed into the dirt near the rear passenger door, and then moving away from the vehicle in a straight line. Not toward the Bowen building, not toward any of the outbuildings, toward the east side of the grounds, where the old drainage infrastructure ran along the fence line before it disappeared under a concrete lip near the tree line. I followed them with my flashlight. They didn't waver. Whoever made them had walked in a straight line like they knew exactly where they were going. Robertson. He was already looking at me. Footprints, small ones, heading toward the storm drain. He came around the car and looked where I was pointing. He stood there a second, hands on his hips, doing the math. "We wait for the locals," he said. "I'm calling it in right now and we hold position." The man on the recorder said his daughter. I heard him. Those are a kid's footprints. I know what they are, Gibson. I looked at the drain. It was maybe 60 yards away, a concrete channel that ran along the base of a low slope before it dropped into a covered inlet. The inlet had a grate on it, but I'd seen the grate before. It was loose. Robertson had flagged it twice in the maintenance log and nothing had been done about it. Teenagers used it. The tunnels underneath connected to the old coal delivery system for the boiler house. I'd read about them in the facility documentation Robertson gave me my first week. They ran under most of the main building. I handed Robertson my radio. "Call it in, I'm going to the drain." "Pedro!" I was already moving. I heard him say something behind me that I didn't catch. Then I heard him start to follow, which I expected. Robertson talks about protocol, but he doesn't actually leave people alone in the field. That's just how he is. The footprints held all the way to the inlet. The grate was pulled aside, leaned against the concrete at an angle. Someone had moved it recently, the algae on the backside still wet. I crouched down and put my flashlight into the opening. The beam went in about 10 feet, and then the tunnel bent. Cold air came up out of it, the kind of cold that's been sitting in a closed space for a long time. It smelled like whetstone and something older than that, something I couldn't name. Robertson came up beside me. He looked at the grate. He looked at the opening. He looked at me. "I already called it in," he said. 12 minutes, maybe 15. "I'm not waiting 15 minutes. He didn't argue again. He just clicked on his own flashlight and went in first, which I hadn't expected, and I followed him. The tunnel was low. I had to duck my head, and Robertson had to duck more. The floor was uneven concrete with a shallow channel running down the center for drainage. It was wet underfoot. The cold got worse the further in we went. Not gradually, it just dropped at a certain point, like crossing into a different room. I noticed it in my hands first, then my face. Then I noticed my flashlight. The beam was wrong. It was still on, still producing light, but the color had shifted. Not the bulb. I checked the bulb. It looked fine. The beam itself had gone a bruised purple, somewhere between violet and gray, and it wasn't throwing light the way it should. Normally, a flashlight beam fans out and hits the wall and you can see the wall. This was going into the wall, not bouncing, going in. The stone was pulling it like the stone was thirsty. Robertson's light was doing the same thing. "You seeing this?" I said. "Yeah," he said, and kept walking. I kept walking too. I didn't know what else to do. There was a kid somewhere in here. The tunnel ran straight for a while, and then there was a branch. And Robertson took the left fork without hesitating, which meant he'd been in here before and knew the layout. I followed it. The sound of our boots on the wet concrete was the only sound. No dripping, no movement, just us. The iron door was at the end of the left branch. Heavy, old. The kind of door that belongs in a place that used to lock people in rather than keep things out. The hinges were rusted, but the door was open a few inches. Robertson pushed it the rest of the way with his shoulder, and we went through. The room on the other side was a basement corridor. Low ceiling, exposed pipes, bare bulb sockets with no bulbs in them. The purple flashlight beams moved across the walls and floor, and I stopped paying attention to how wrong they looked, because there was a person in the corner. He was sitting on the floor, with his back against the wall and his knees pulled up. A man, maybe late 30s, wearing a jacket with a lot of pockets. The kind of thing you'd buy at an outdoor gear store. His hands were in his lap. His head was up. His eyes were wrong. Both of them. The irises were gone. Or not gone, but covered. A milky white film over both eyes like cataracts you'd see in someone 4 times his age. He was looking at us, but I wasn't sure he was seeing us. Robertson said, "Sir, can you hear me?" The man said, "The hallways are breathing." His voice was calm. That was the part that got me a little. Not panicked, just stating a fact. "The hallways are breathing," he said again. "And the architecture changed. It's not the same building it was when we came in." Robertson took a step toward him. "We're going to get you out. Can you stand?" "The shadows are anchored to my skin," the man said. "Don't touch me." Robertson reached for him anyway, hands under the man's arm to lift him, and the man screamed. Not a pained scream. A warning scream, the kind you make when someone's about to step on something. I looked down. The man's shadow was wrong. He was crouched against the wall, but his shadow was standing upright. Straight up, full height, arms at its sides. And while I was looking at it, it moved, not to match him, on its own. It turned its head toward Robertson, and one arm came up reaching, and the hand of it was 6 inches from Robertson's throat. I shoved Robertson hard, both hands, center mass. He went sideways and hit the wall, and the shadow's hand passed through the air where his throat had been. That was it. Just that. I didn't think about it. My body did it before my brain caught up. The cold came right after. Not a drop in temperature, not a chill. A wall of it, physical, like getting hit with something solid. It knocked the air out of me, and I heard Robertson grunt like he'd been punched. We both went down to one knee at the same time. I couldn't breathe for a second. My chest just stopped working. I put a hand on the floor, and the stone was so cold it burned. Robertson got his breath back before I did. He said, "What was—" "Don't know," I said. Still couldn't get a full sentence out. The man in the corner, Weaver, had gone quiet. He was rocking a little, arms around his knees. His shadow was back on the wall behind him, normal position, flat and still. I didn't look at it for long. Then the wall started moving. Not cracking, not shifting. Moving. The stone surface went soft-looking, like something was pushing through it from the other side. Rippling. The whole room doing it, slow and even, like the building was breathing. Weaver had said that. The hallways are breathing. I'd thought he was out of his mind. He wasn't wrong. Robertson said, "Gibson." "Yeah," I said. "I see it." The brick on the far wall started to change. There wasn't a door there. I'd looked at that wall when we came in. Solid brick, no seams, nothing. But the surface buckled inward and then outward, and then a rectangle of it just became a door. Frame and everything. Like it had always been there and someone had just turned a light on. It opened. The girl on the other side was maybe 8. Small, dark hair, wearing a pink jacket with a hood. She was moving wrong. Not hurt, not scared, just wrong, like watching a video with frames missing. She'd be standing still, and then she'd be 3 feet closer, and I hadn't seen her take a step. Freeze, jump, getting closer each time. Behind her was the other thing. I don't have a good word for it. Translucent, kind of. Geometric. Shapes that didn't hold still, triangles and angles folding into each other, and then unfolding. The whole mass of it shifting and rearranging while it moved. It was pushing her forward, not touching her exactly, but surrounding her, pressing in from behind and the sides, herding her toward us. She wasn't making any sound. Her face was blank. Robertson said, "Is that a child?" "We need to go," I said. I grabbed his arm and we went back through the iron door the way we'd come in into the hallway. Robertson pulled it shut behind us. I don't know if that did anything. I didn't hear the door open again, but I also didn't look back to check. The hallway was wrong. When we'd come through it maybe 20 minutes ago, it was short. 30 feet, maybe 40. Basement corridor, low ceiling, couple of bare bulbs. I could see the far end when we entered. Now I couldn't. The hallway stretched out ahead of us and the end wasn't visible. Just corridor going and going, the ceiling getting lower as it went, or maybe that was the light. The bulbs were spaced further apart than I remembered, and the space between them was darker than it should have been. Robertson said, "This isn't..." "I know," I said. "Walk." We walked. The floor felt different. It was concrete when we came in. Now it had some give to it, soft in a way concrete isn't soft. My boots pressed in slightly with each step, not enough to sink, just enough to feel wrong. Like walking on ground that's wet underneath, turf over mud. I kept my eyes forward and didn't look down. The air was wrong too. Thicker, not humid, just resistant, like moving through something that didn't want to be moved through. I was working harder than I should have been for a flat surface. Robertson was limping a little, favoring his right side from where I'd shoved him into the wall. I didn't say anything about it. We'd been walking for maybe 2 minutes when Robertson went through the floor. His left leg punched through the boards up to his knee, not slowly, not a gradual sinking. 1 step, and then his leg was in the floor up to his knee, and he went down hard on his hands. I grabbed him under both arms and pulled. The floor held him. I could feel it holding him, not like suction, like grip, like it had closed around his leg. I pulled harder. Robertson made a sound I don't want to describe. Then it let go, not gradually. All at once, like something releasing. Robertson's leg came free and we both fell back, and I got him up against the wall and looked at his leg. His pants were shredded from the knee down. The skin underneath was torn up, and it was bleeding, but the blood was wrong. Dark, too dark. Not the color blood is. It was black and it moved slow, and where it ran down his shin, it left a stain that didn't look like blood at all. Robertson looked at it for a second, then he looked at me. He said, "Leave me." "No. Gibson." His voice was flat, not panicked, not dramatic, just flat. I can hear them. In my head. Patience. Old ones, I think, from a long time ago. I don't want to carry that out. I didn't say anything for a second. I was looking at his leg. The black was still spreading, slow, up toward his knee. "I'm not leaving you," I said. "You should." "I'm not." He didn't argue after that. I don't know if he didn't have the energy or if he knew it wouldn't work. I got him up, got his arm over my shoulder, and we kept moving. He was heavy. Robertson's not a small guy, ex-state trooper, broad through the chest, and he had probably 30 pounds on me easy. But this was different. He felt heavier than he should have. Not immediately, but with each step, incrementally, like something was adding weight to him. By the time we'd gone another 50 feet, he felt like I was carrying twice what I should have been. My legs were burning. The floor kept giving under my boots. Behind us, the sound started. Grinding, metallic. Like gears, but wrong. Like gears made of something that wasn't metal grinding against something that also wasn't metal. It was coming from back the way we'd come, from behind the iron door, and it was getting louder. Not fast. Steady. The way something moves when it doesn't need to hurry. I didn't look back. Robertson's weight kept climbing. I had my shoulder under his arm and my hand gripped at his jacket, and I was working for every step. The corridor ahead of us still didn't end. I could see it going. I could see the bulbs spaced out into the dark, and I counted them, and there were too many. There should not have been that many bulbs in a basement corridor under a building this size. The grinding got louder. Robertson said quietly, "It's closer." "I know," I said. I kept moving. The window was at the end of the corridor. I could see it. Small, rectangular, set high in the wall where the basement met the foundation. The kind of window that exists in every old building like this, put there so maintenance guys could check the sump or read a gauge or whatever. Not for escape. Didn't matter. It was there, and it was the only thing I was looking at. Robertson said something I didn't catch. His voice had gone quiet and strange, like he was talking to someone I couldn't see. I didn't ask him to repeat it. I just moved. The air was wrong. I don't know how else to say it. It wasn't thicker exactly. It wasn't like walking through water. It was more like the corridor didn't want to give up any ground. Every step I took felt like I was pressing into something that was pressing back. Not hard enough to stop me. Just hard enough that I noticed. Just hard enough that it cost something. Robertson kept getting heavier. I'm not small. 6'1", I kept myself in decent shape even after I got out. I wasn't struggling to carry a grown man under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances, and Robertson wasn't behaving like a normal amount of weight anymore. He'd started heavy, and he kept climbing. Not all at once, incrementally, like something was being added to him a little at a time, like someone was stacking plates on a bar and waiting to see when I'd drop it. My legs were burning. My lower back was starting to talk to me. I had my shoulder jammed up under his arm and my other hand locked in the collar of his jacket. And I was pulling and pushing and just grinding forward, and the window was still 40 feet away and the grinding behind us was still getting louder. I thought about the army, which is a weird thing to think about. I thought about a ruck march in Georgia in August with 60 pounds on my back and a sergeant behind me telling me the only thing that mattered was the next step. Not the mile, not the distance, just the next step. I thought about that a lot during the next 40 feet. Robertson murmured something again. This time I caught a word. He said, "Children." I didn't respond to that. The grinding rose in pitch for a second, this awful climbing squeal, and then dropped back to the low, steady chew it had been doing. I felt it in my back teeth. Robertson's weight spiked and I went down to one knee, hit the floor hard, and just held there for a second, breathing through my nose. The floor under my knee was soft. Didn't go through. Held. I pushed back up. 20 feet. The air was pushing back harder. I could feel it against my face now, not like wind, just resistance. Like the building was a hand, and it was pressing flat against me. Robertson's jacket was damp with sweat, and I was losing my grip, and I switched hands and kept going. 10 feet. The window was small, maybe 18 inches wide, maybe 12 inches tall. I'd have to get Robertson through it and then get myself through it, and the grinding was close enough now that I could feel it vibrating in the floor under my boots. I didn't think about that. I just got to the window. I let Robertson down against the wall, propped him sitting with his back to the stone. His head lolled. His eyes were open but pointed at nothing. His leg was bad. I'd been trying not to look at it, and I was still trying not to look at it. I looked at the window instead. I hit it with my elbow. The glass was old and thin, and it went on the first shot. Just blew outward, and cold outside air came in, and it smelled like wet grass and mud, and I almost laughed. I knocked the remaining glass out of the frame as fast as I could, cutting my forearm somewhere in the process. Didn't feel it until later. Outside was maybe a 4-foot drop to the lawn. I got Robertson up, got his arms through the frame, and pushed. He was dead weight. I had to climb half out the window myself to get leverage, hanging there with my hips on the sill and my hands on his jacket. And I shoved him out, and he dropped and hit the grass, and I heard him grunt, which meant he was still in there somewhere. Then I went through. I hit the ground shoulder first, rolled, came up on my knees in the wet grass. Cold air, real air. The grass was overgrown and soaked, and I put my hands in it, and it was just grass, just cold and wet and real. Robertson was on his back, 2 feet away. I got to him, and then the weight was just gone. Not gradually, not fading. Just gone. I reached for him to check his pulse, and he felt like a normal person. Like 180 pounds of unconscious man. And I sat back on my heels for a second and breathed. I looked back at the Bowen building. I don't know what made me look. I just did. For 1 second, the whole thing was glass. The entire building, all of it, every floor, every wall, transparent. And inside it were people, hundreds of them, pressed up against the stone from the inside, faces against the walls, hands flat, and they were all looking out. Not at me, specifically, just out. The way people look out windows when they're waiting for something. Then it was just a building again. Brick and decay and dark windows and a broken frame where I'd just come through. I sat there for another second. Then I pulled out my phone and called 911. The dispatcher picked up on the second ring. I told her I was at the Bowen building in Bartonville, that I had an injured man, that I needed an ambulance. She asked me questions and I answered them. She said help was coming. I said okay. I hung up. Robertson was breathing, shallow but steady. His leg was blackened from the knee down, the skin gone dark and wrong looking. And I put my jacket over him and sat next to him in the wet grass, and for maybe 3 minutes I actually thought that was it. That it was over. That the ambulance would come and we'd go to a hospital and there'd be paperwork and a very strange story and eventually some kind of normal. I heard the ambulance before I saw the lights. And then I saw the lights. And then behind the ambulance, rolling through the broken gate one after another. 3 white vans. Unmarked. No plates I could read from here. Moving with a kind of quiet coordination that I recognized. Not chaotic. Deliberate. Like they knew exactly where they were going and had been here before. The vans stopped. The ambulance stopped. Men got out of the vans first. Gray hazmat suits, full face shields, moving in pairs, not running, walking with purpose toward the Escalade, toward the storm drain, toward the building, not toward us. One of them peeled off from the group and walked toward me. I stayed where I was in the grass next to Robertson and watched him come. He stopped about 6 feet from me and just stood there for a second. Not threatening exactly, just present, like he was waiting for me to register him before he started talking. Plain dark suit, no badge I could see, light brown hair, normal face, the kind of face you'd forget in a parking lot. He looked like someone whose whole job was to be forgettable. "Mr. Gibson," he said. Not a question. I didn't ask how he knew my name. "I'm a representative from the Illinois Department of Public Health." He said it smooth, like he'd said it 100 times. "We've been monitoring a situation at this facility for several weeks. What you experienced tonight was the result of a chemical leak originating from the old boiler infrastructure beneath the main building. The compounds involved caused severe auditory and visual hallucinations, disorientation, and in some cases, temporary neurological disruption." I looked at Robertson on the ground next to me. His leg was black from the knee down. "That's a chemical leak," I said. "The compounds can cause vascular inflammation and surface tissue discoloration, yes." He didn't blink. "Your colleague will receive appropriate medical care." Behind him, 2 of the hazmat guys had reached the Escalade. One of them popped the back hatch and started pulling out the recording equipment. Not carefully, just pulling it out and stacking it on the ground. Another one was already at the storm drain with what looked like a pressurized tank, spraying white foam into the opening. The foam expanded fast, filling the drain, spilling a little over the concrete lip. I watched them work. They were fast, coordinated. Nobody was conferring with anybody. They just knew what to do and where to go and in what order. I've been in the Army. I know what a rehearsed operation looks like. This was one. There's a man in that building, I said. Savannah Weaver, and a kid, his daughter. The individuals inside the facility are being located and will receive medical attention. His eyes were chemical exposure, he said. Same smooth tone. It's treatable. I didn't say anything else about Weaver. I don't know why. I think I already understood that arguing about what I'd seen wasn't going to accomplish anything. The story was already written. He was just reading it to me. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, held it out toward me. This is a non-disclosure agreement under the provisions of the Internal Security Act. It covers everything you observed tonight, including the vehicle, the individuals, the underground access points, and any audio or visual content you may have encountered. I took it, unfolded it. It was about 4 pages, small print, with a signature line at the bottom and a line for the date. And if I don't sign it, I said, then I'll be placing you under arrest right now, under Section 14 of the Internal Security Act for unauthorized access to a restricted environmental hazard zone and obstruction of a federal remediation effort. He said it the same way he'd said everything else. Not loud, not angry, just factual. That carries a minimum of 18 months. I looked at the paper. I looked at Robertson. 2 of the van guys were walking toward Robertson now. Not the ambulance crew, the van guys. He needs a hospital, I said. He'll be taken to a facility equipped to handle chemical exposure cases. That's not an ambulance. No, he said. It isn't. They crouched next to Robertson and got their hands under him, one at his shoulders and one at his legs, and they lifted him. Robertson's head lolled. He didn't wake up. They carried him toward the middle van, not fast, not rough, just efficient. And I stood there with 4 pages of small print in my hands and watched them load him in. The van door closed. That was it. I signed the paper. I didn't read all of it. I read enough to know it said I agreed that everything I experienced was the result of chemical exposure and that I had no legal standing to discuss, report, or reference the events of the night in any capacity, public or private, for the rest of my life. There was a clause about ongoing federal monitoring. I signed it anyway. I wrote the date. I handed it back. He folded it and put it back in his jacket. Your employment with Bartonville Security Services is terminated effective immediately, he said. You'll receive a final check by mail. Your personal items from the guard station will be shipped to the address on file. I nodded. You're also being asked to leave Bartonville tonight, permanently. Asked, I said. He looked at me for a second. Yes. I picked my jacket up off the grass. There was black staining on the inside lining where it had been over Robertson's leg. I folded it so the stain was on the inside and held it under my arm. The hazmat guys were finishing up at the storm drain. The foam had hardened into a pale crust over the opening. One of them was photographing the Escalade with a small camera, methodical, working around the vehicle in a slow circle. Another one was at the smashed driver's window with a collection kit. The whole operation was wrapping up. I could feel it. The way a job site feels when the last hour of work starts, that particular shift in energy. They were almost done. I walked to my car. It was parked on the access road where I'd left it at the start of shift, a 2009 Civic with a cracked rear bumper and a coffee cup still in the holder from the drive-in. I got in. The seat was cold. The dashboard clock said 5:42. I sat there for a minute. The representative was talking to two of the hazmat guys near the vans. He had a phone out now. He wasn't looking at me. I started the car and pulled out through the broken gate. The wooden barrier pieces still scattered across the road, and I drove away from the Bowen building for the last time. The sun was coming up over the Illinois River. Not dramatic. Just gray going to orange at the edges. The flat Midwestern sky doing what it does. I drove through Bartonville on empty streets, past the Casey's General Store and the Dollar General and the grain elevator that's visible from basically everywhere in town, and I got onto Route 24 heading toward Peoria. I told myself it was over. I'd signed the paper. Robertson was gone, wherever gone meant. Weaver was their problem now. The Bowen building was behind me and getting further behind me every mile, and whatever had happened in those tunnels had an official explanation that I'd agreed in writing to accept. Chemical leak, mass hallucinations, vascular inflammation, surface tissue discoloration. I said it in my head a few times. It didn't sound more real the more I said it. I kept driving. The river was on my left, flat and brown in the early light. A gas station appeared on the right side of the road, a shell, the lights still bright against the pale sky. I was maybe 4 miles out of Bartonville. My hands were dirty. I'd noticed it in the grass, but hadn't had time to deal with it. Dark residue under my nails, embedded in the creases of my knuckles. I figured I'd stop and wash up before I hit the highway. I pulled in. The bathroom was a single occupancy. I locked the door behind me. The fluorescent light buzzed a little, one of those fixtures that takes a few seconds to fully commit. The sink was white porcelain, small, with separate hot and cold handles. There was a paper towel dispenser on the wall and a bar of pink hand soap in a plastic holder bolted next to the faucet. The mirror above the sink was the cheap, frameless kind, just a rectangle of glass glued to the tile. I'd been in 1,000 bathrooms exactly like this one. I turned the hot water on and got it as warm as it would go, which wasn't very, and I worked the soap into a lather and started scrubbing. The stuff under my nails was dark. Not blood, not grease, not the kind of dirt that comes from working outside. It was in the creases of my knuckles too, in the fine lines of my palms. Dark and embedded, like it had been there a while. I'd noticed it on the lawn outside the Bowen building, but there hadn't been time to think about it. I figured soap and hot water would handle it. That's how dirt works. I scrubbed for probably 2 minutes straight. Worked my thumbnail under each nail on my right hand, then my left. Ran the nail brush I found in a cup next to the soap along every crease. The water running off my hands was clear. Nothing was coming out. The stain wasn't transferring to the sink, wasn't dissolving into the water. It was just sitting there, under the surface of my skin, like it had always been there, and I'd only just noticed it. I tried the cold water, I don't know why. I tried it anyway. Same result. I stood there with the water running and looked at my hands. They were clean in every way I knew how to make them clean. The stain was still there. I turned the water off. That's when I looked up at the mirror. I don't know exactly what I expected. My own face, probably. I looked rough. I hadn't slept. My uniform was torn at the left shoulder. There was a scrape along my jaw I didn't remember getting. I looked like someone who'd had a bad night, which was accurate. I shifted my weight to my right foot. Just a small movement, a natural shift. My shadow didn't move. I stood there for a second, looked at it. The shadow was still in the position it had been in before I moved. Weight distributed evenly, standing straight. I'd shifted, and it hadn't. It was maybe a 1-second delay, maybe a little more. Then it caught up, settled into the new position like it had always been there. I didn't move again for a while. I'm not someone who panics fast. The Army trained some of that out of me, and the rest was probably just how I'm wired. But there's a difference between not panicking and not registering. I registered it. I stood very still in that gas station bathroom under the buzzing fluorescent light, and I registered exactly what I'd just seen. I moved my hand. lifted it slowly, deliberately, watched the mirror. The shadow hand lagged. Half a second, maybe. Then it followed. I set my hand back down. Here's the thing about the Bowen building. Whatever was in there, it had been in there a long time. Decades. Probably longer. It had learned the architecture, had grown into the walls and the tunnels and the geometry of the place. And when I'd come through that window, when I'd smashed the glass and dragged Robertson out onto the grass, I'd crossed from inside to outside. I'd moved through a threshold, and something had come with me. Not all of it. I don't think all of it could leave, but something. Some piece of it, or some marker, or some mechanism it uses to hold a door open. I didn't have language for it, I still don't, really. But I understood the function of it. The way you understand a lock even if you can't explain the mechanics. The thing had tagged me on the way out. The ink under my nails was the proof. The shadow lag was the proof. I was carrying something that didn't belong to me, and I hadn't had a choice in the matter. I thought about Robertson, about the black that had come out of his leg wound, and the way he'd said he could hear the patients from 1920 screaming in his skull. I thought about what they'd loaded him into, and whether whatever was happening to him was the same category of thing as what was happening to me, or something different. I didn't know. I figured I'd never know. I dried my hands on a paper towel. The stain was still there. I dropped the paper towel in the trash and unlocked the door and walked back out to the car. The sun was up now, low and flat over the fields. The sky was that pale yellow it gets in early morning in central Illinois. Not dramatic, just wide and washed out. A semi pulled out of the lot as I was getting in. The guy behind the register was watching something on his phone. Normal Tuesday morning. Regular world. I sat in the driver's seat for a minute. I thought about my apartment in Peoria. Second floor of a building on Heading Avenue. 4 other units. A woman on the first floor with a small dog that barked at everything. I thought about the people in those other units. I thought about my neighbor across the hall, a guy named Marcus who worked at OSF and always left his shoes outside his door. I thought about what it would mean to bring this thing back into that building, into those 4 walls, into a space where other people lived their regular lives. I thought about the shadow lagging in my apartment bathroom. I thought about it in the hallway. I thought about it spreading, the way it had spread through the Bowen building's walls, and I stopped thinking about my apartment. I thought about my sister in Bloomington. I thought about my buddy Trent from Fort Bragg who'd been texting me about coming up for a long weekend sometime in October. I thought about every person I knew and where they lived and what their spaces looked like, and I put each one of them away. Not forever, maybe. I didn't know. But not now. Not yet. I started the car. I got back onto Route 24 heading east and merged onto I-74 toward the city. The highway was light, mostly trucks. I set my speed and got in the right lane and drove. I checked the side mirror. My shadow was there, cast across the seat and the door panel by the angle of the morning sun. It moved when I moved. I adjusted my grip on the wheel and watched it adjust. I shifted in the seat and watched it shift. It was behaving. For now, it was behaving. I knew that would change. I didn't know when, didn't know what it would look like when it did, didn't know if there was anything I could do about it, or if doing something about it was even a concept that applied. But I knew the lag would widen. The half second would become a full second, then more. The ink would spread, probably. Something else would happen that I didn't have a name for yet. I had time before that. Some amount of time. I didn't know how much. The highway stretched out ahead of me, flat and straight the way central Illinois highways are. Fields on both sides, the city still a long way off. I wasn't going to the city. I wasn't going anywhere specific. I was just moving, putting distance between me and Bartonville, between me and the Bowen building and the tunnels and the iron door and everything behind that iron door. I kept my eyes on the road. I checked the mirror every few minutes. The shadow moved with me, correctly, evenly, right on time. I watched it. I drove. I waited.